afternoon. This hearing is called to order. This is a public hearing of the City Council Committee on Labor and Civil Service. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on Bill number 180846. I recognize the presence of a quorum of the committee members. Members of the committee in attendance are Vice Chair, Councilman Brian O'Neill, Council members Dom, Gim, and Squilla. Do any of you, and I would ask Councilman Squilla, who is the lead sponsor of this bill that was also offered an introduction with Council members Sanchez, Parker, Blackwell, Bass, Greenlee, Heening, Gim, Jones, Council President Clark, Council members Johnson, Green, and Reynolds Brown, if he has any comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. And as you can see, with the number of sponsors on this bill, how important you realize it is to City Council. But first, before we start, I'd just like to, again, acknowledge Councilman Good, whose initial legislation created where we are today. So I think we should get ready. Councilman Good led the way on living wage, understanding if we as a city need to move the needle on poverty, we have to start paying people more money, and that's the most important thing. And the other thing, as a city of Philadelphia, as we work with the administration, and you're going to hear Deputy Mayor of Labor, Rich Laser, testify later on, working together with the administration, learning to lead by example. And I see a lot of those signs up here, and it's so important to... Leading by example, we could show that the city cares about the people of this city, the workers of the city of Philadelphia, the contractors and some subcontractors, and knowing if we do that and if we lead, others will follow. And you'll see private industry start to follow along, and knowing that our people of our city deserve a living wage. And this again is just a start, working with a lot of other legislation, as you're going to hear in the future, to continue to move the needle on poverty. And I do want to thank Reverend Holston and Power and the whole team. Along with ASME and SEIU and Unite Here and all our union partners for understanding what it means to have a living wage here in the city of Philadelphia. So we'll let the hearing continue. We're going to have some testimony from the administration and then by some other members of the community. And thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak, and looking forward to having this hearing.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gim.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to also extend my gratitude to everyone who came out here today to show support for workers and for a city that needs to be on the rise. I also want to thank my colleague, Councilman Squilla, and certainly my personal mentor, and many of the folks in this audience are here. Wilson Good Jr. Thank you so much, Councilman, for leading by example for such a long time. And, you know, I just want us to remember in this room what it takes to get to places. It takes so much organizing, and it takes a moral authority, sometimes beyond and outside the halls of power. And especially when we are in a situation where, you know, our state legislature has not moved on the lowest minimum wage in the entire country, where Congress is stuck, that we as a city can and must do better. And that that the problem of poverty is not just an issue that is to be lived and experienced, but that it is an economic system that is manufactured and therefore can and must be changed. Power's work and tireless work helped lead us to today's hearing, and we are now in a collaboration as a whole city to really see what truly it looks like to see the city lift people out of poverty. We have seen cities push people out of poverty, push them out of our cities, push them out of our center places, but not here. Here we are trying to do something different. We are here to lift up. And when we lift up, imagine what this city can look like when people can put roofs over their heads, food on the table, keep their families together. That is the central mission. That's what holds us together. And here and today, I'm proud that we are going to talk about what it means to lift up the city's minimum wage and have it extend to all of our subcontractors within the city of Philadelphia, an extremely powerful responsibility, but also that it coincides with things like a fair work week and an opportunity for people outside of city employment. And it has been a real pleasure to thank Power for becoming an active organization around that fight as well. I want to thank our administration for showing leadership in committing to providing a living wage to our subcontractors and our city workers, and for committing to ensuring and supporting a fair work week standards for the service, retail, and hospitality workers all across the city. And I'm looking forward to December 6th when we can see a true economic dignity message come before City Council, delivered and carried by all of you in this room, but sent out with a loud call to every single member of our city and all across the country, that this is a nation that is going to see a moral calling for ending poverty, for lifting people out of it, and for a City Council and a municipality that will be on the cutting edge of it. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Vice Chair O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I voted for Councilman Good's bill originally. I'll be voting for this today. I just refer to it when people ask me, is the city putting its money where its mouth is? And because we essentially pay for this through our contracts. And I think it's the right thing to do. But I also would ask our list of witnesses, I don't think this is real controversial at this point on the council. And if you could express your support and let us read your testimony, I'd like to be around for the final vote on this and not have to leave my vote, because it's always questionable whether the vote really counts if you leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair O'Neill. And Vice Chair O'Neill, I'm telling you, that's what comes with your seniority. You knew how to deliver that message diplomatically. But just want to say for the record, you heard me when I mentioned Councilman Squilla, our lead sponsor of the bill, but I was very intentional about reading the number of sponsors, of co-sponsors, so that you know it is highly likely that we will see unanimous passage of this bill from committee today. So I just wanted to note that for the record. In addition to that, let me just say that as a district council person, I am very much concerned about an issue called neighborhood stabilization. And if you want people to be in a position where they can afford to make repairs, they can improve the very home that they live in, the best way to do that is to provide them with the tools, the economic self-sufficiency that will allow them to have some dignity when they can do it and make those repairs, because they are earning a wage that would allow them to do so. So this is not just a moral, this is not just, doesn't provide just a moral imperative. This is allowing people to have some dignity in the process of doing that. With that being said, I'm going to ask the clerk to now read the title of the bill being considered today.
Bill number 180846, an ordinance amending section 17-1305 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Compensation Required to be Paid to Employees, to revise the compensation required to be provided in connection with application of the Philadelphia 21st Century Minimum Wage Standard, and amending section 19-2604 of the Code entitled Tax Rates, Credits, and Alternative Tax Computation, to make the wage rates related to the tax credit for new job creation consistent with section 17-1305, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before I ask the clerk to call on the first witnesses, the first panel to testify, I do want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Derek Green, Councilmember at Large. Any comments, Councilman? Okay, with that being said, will the clerk please call the first panel to testify?
Richard Laser and Manny Citron from the City of Philadelphia.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you both. I'm just going to ask you to please state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Sure. Richard Laser, Deputy Mayor for Labor. Good afternoon, Chairwoman. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Manny. Let me cut you off.
Manny Citron, Chief of Staff in the Mayor's Office of Labor.
So, good afternoon, Chairwoman Parker, members of the committee. My name is Richard Laser. I'm Deputy Mayor for Labor, and I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and testify in favor of Bill number 180846. Bill number 180846 will amend Chapter 17-1300 of the Philadelphia Code, the 21st century minimum wage standard, to increase the minimum wage standard for city contracts to $15 an hour by July 1, 2023. On behalf of the mayor and the entire administration, I'd like to extend our thanks to council for considering this bill. The question of where Philadelphia should set its living wage is part of a larger conversation happening across America about what exactly a minimum wage is for. For too long, the federal minimum wage and the minimum wage set by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has set people across our country up for failure. Here in Philadelphia, we see the impacts of this with too many of our neighbors working hard every day to still struggle to make ends meet because they simply can't afford to pay their bills, make their rent, and raise their kids on $7.25 an hour. The city first started on the path of addressing this challenge under Councilman Good's bill in 2005 when council passed the first iteration of the minimum wage and benefit standard. The ordinance has been tweaked and amended in the years since, but today, in supporting Bill number 180846, we feel that we are continuing on the path towards supporting family-sustaining jobs for city workers and city contractors. At $15 an hour, hardworking Philadelphians can truly begin to climb out of poverty. They can pay their bills, put food on the table, and finally enjoy the security of having at least a small nest egg in case something unexpected comes up. In setting this minimum standard, the City of Philadelphia will once again lead by example and ensure that our own employees and the employees of our contractors and subcontractors earn a wage that allows them the dignity of living beyond the reach of poverty. The administration strongly supports this bill and thanks Councilman Squilla, Chairwoman Parker, and all the partners in the advocacy and labor community. I just want to give a shout out to SEIU, Unite Here, and AFSCME, and specifically Power that has really championed this legislation over the last several months. And I also want to thank former Councilman Good for all the work he's done on this, spearheading this back in 2005 and all that he's done in this council. So at this point, that concludes my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, and this will be quick because we're all on the same side here, so it's really good, and it's kind of fun to have this type of hearing. But I do want to personally thank you, Manny, and the administration for putting up with me and all the groups with the constant meetings and emails back and forth, and knowing that by working together and communicating, we can get to a place where we all could be supportive of this great legislation, and then becoming an administrative piece of legislation to be put forward is it's a true sign of how working together and how we could positively move the needle together as council and administration work together on this. And a real quick story, I was at a Flag Day celebration about 2 years ago, and Kate Esposito came up to me and said that, we want to do $15 an hour. Would you support that? I said, oh, sure. I said, let's get together and talk about it. And we sat down and talked about it, and it took a while to get here, but we are here today, and so I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful for the administration's willingness to work with everybody on this. So great job, and thank you.
No, thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Don.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm in favor of this, but I have a question I want to pose to you, or a challenge that when I look at the numbers, even $15 an hour, I say to myself, we still are leaving $100 million in federal earned income tax credits on the table in Washington that could go to 40,000 Philadelphians, $100 million. And I'm trying to think, is there any way that we can require or recommend? I mean, think about it this way. Single parent, $44,000 of income, 2 kids under the age of 17, or a couple, $51,000 of income, 2 kids under the age of 17, can get checks from the federal government of $6,000 a year and file back 3 additional years. They can get $24,000. We left $100 million that was taken out of our paychecks in federal withholding and sits in Washington, D.C. So my challenge for you, Richie, is how can we incorporate some way of getting people informed
Right.
on this EITC that should come back to all of our people, the 40,000 Philadelphians that aren't getting these checks?
Yeah, I think we definitely agree with you, and we know you've been championing that since you've been here. I think we can use the coalition that helped put this bill together, along with yourself and the administration, and how we can inform as many people as possible that they're leaving money on the table that is rightfully their money. And we'd be honored to, work with you on that.
Yeah, because we have 400,000 people in poverty. This would impact 10%, which is a huge impact, and it doesn't cost us anything other than, communicating it.
No, definitely. We
All
agree
right,
with
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee for this panel? Seeing none, I want to say thank you all so very much, and we've constantly heard, thank the administration along with our lead sponsor here, Councilman Squilla. You go downstairs to that second floor and you tell Mayor Jim Kenney, thank you for leading from the front on this issue, not the administration, but our Mayor Jim Kenney. Thank you, Rich
Thank you.
Laser.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Will the clerk please call the second panel?
Mark Price, labor economist at Keystone Research Center.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Please state your name for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
record.
My name is Mark Price. I'm a labor economist at the Keystone Research Center based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Sorry it took so long to get up here. I like to make an entrance, I think, sometimes. Keystone is a think tank based in Harrisburg. We focus on economic issues throughout the Commonwealth, in particular on issues of wages, and so I thank the council for taking up this ordinance. We are certainly supportive of the idea of setting a wage floor at 15 in this city for workers employed by the city contractors. For many people in this community, as you all know very well, wages are so low, they have difficulty making their ends meet. They can barely cover their rent or transportation, and they then have to rely on the local food bank. And of course, as many of you have probably seen in the last couple of weeks, there was a major report using USDA data that indicated that 300,000 people in this city are food insecure, right? They don't have access to the food they need to live a healthy and full lifestyle. And the Economic Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. has put together, and it's in my testimony, some data on the cost of living that's specific to this city. And by their estimate, a single adult with no children needs around $2,785 a month to cover rent, to cover health care, transportation, necessities, and taxes. When you look at what you earn at $15 an hour, that's an income on a monthly basis of just $2,600. So even 15 leaves you a bit short of what it actually costs to live in this city. And I think that's a very important thing to recognize. And here I would also note that when you express the federal poverty threshold on a monthly basis, a single adult to be officially poor has to earn less than $1,063 a month. If you have one child, that's $1,408 a month. So those are very conservative thresholds. And the issue of people not being able to make their ends meet isn't just about those in your community that are officially poor. It extends well up in the income distribution. There are a lot of people who are working and simply are not making enough. Now, you also have the wonderful privilege of being in a city that has an unemployment rate of 5.2%. That's the lowest September unemployment rate that you've had in this city in 28 years. I'd have to go to an older data set to find out if it was ever lower than that. So this is a city that's performing quite well, but that economic growth is not broadly shared. When we look at income growth in this city, we find that the top 20% of families in the city have seen their income grow after you adjust for inflation by about 13% since 2007. The bottom 60% of the city's families, and this includes those in poverty as well as those near, the bottom 60% have seen no growth in their income compared to the 60% back in 2007. So the city's performing well. It's generating a lot of employment. It's growing faster than the state of Pennsylvania, but a lot of that growth is not trickling down to your constituents. And I think policies like you're proposing are a step in the right direction. We established minimum wage laws to correct for the fact that low-wage workers lack bargaining power. So they have difficulty negotiating with their employer for a livable wage. They also have difficulty gaining access to higher wages as the economy grows and profitability grows. So it's important to raise the minimum wage as a way to overcome that shortage of bargaining power. When we look at the data, the median wage for a full-time worker back in 1968, which I'm sure none of us remember, was $3.15 an hour. The minimum wage in that year was $1.60 per hour. So a typical minimum wage worker made at least half of what a typical worker made. Now you fast forward to today, the minimum wage is less than a third of what the typical worker in this state earns. And this is a result of the fact that over time, the federal government and Pennsylvania, they have not raised the minimum wage as often as they should have, or as high as they should have. And that has reduced purchasing power of the minimum wage, and that's not just hurt those that are right at $7.15, it's extended to really the bottom 20% of workers. Now, there is a proposal in the General Assembly to raise the minimum wage in the state of Pennsylvania to $15 an hour by 2024. That would lift the wages for just over 250,000 workers here in the city of Philadelphia. That's about almost 40% of your resident workforce. So again, the challenge of low wages is a widespread problem. While we wait for the General Assembly to take action on raising the minimum wage, I think it's perfectly appropriate for the city of Philadelphia to take a very modest step of raising the wage floor that prevails for contractors that are employed, for workers that are employed by your contractors providing services to the city. These ordinances are common throughout the country, and they're typically known as living wage ordinances, and they really seek to make the public sector a model employer. While this ordinance can be expected to increase contracting costs for the city, it's important to recognize that the failure to pay livable wages now imposes costs on workers, their families, and their communities. So when a fair day's work doesn't provide a fair day's pay, that leads to a longer line at the local food bank. That leads to a longer line of people seeking housing assistance. And so Philadelphia, as an employer of labor, knows probably better than every other employer in this city the consequences of low wages, because it comes back to haunt you in every other aspect of public services. So it's perfectly appropriate for the city to take a step towards establishing we're going to be a good employer. We're going to make sure the wages we pay are livable. With that, that's the end of my testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Chair recognizes Councilman Dunham.
Mr. Price, I just want to let you know I'm probably the oldest one up here, and I remember getting paid $1.60 an hour when I went to school, went to wrestling practice, 7 to 10 o'clock at night. I was a janitor in an office building, so I do remember that. But my question to you is, if the issue here, I think, is that if minimum wage had been adjusted from the beginning to the rate of inflation, what would that number be today?
So the rate of inflation would get you to around $10 an hour.
Today?
Today.
For some reason, I thought it was higher.
No. Inflation is actually it's a pretty conservative metric for raising wages. So yeah, it gets you to about 10. If you adjusted wages for productivity growth, and there's a sign back
Right.
there that has that on it, the minimum wage would be much higher, probably in the range of $16, $17. There's that sign.
Okay.
So, there we go.
Okay.
And my preferred metric is I would like to get the minimum wage back to about half. So when you were earning the minimum wage back there in 1968, thank you for that admission, that's where I'd like us to get, about half. That would limit the growth in inequality that we've seen over time, and certainly that's the goal.
And have you ever done a study that shows by raising wages on municipalities, how much money they might save in other areas?
I have not. You mean in terms of if we had higher wages, we wouldn't have to spend as much on housing assistance.
Right.
I have not seen those, and I think that's driven more than anything by the fact that we still remain stuck in a period where minimum wages are generally pretty low. I think over time, as you see places like California and Washington, we'll begin to see more of that sort of careful work done to illustrate clearly that when you're raising wages, you get less reliance on public services.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be just really quick. Mark, thank you so much for all the work that you've done, particularly on your research around the state of working Philadelphia. I think that was extremely powerful. I think also a statistic that was mentioned that is very moving to a lot of people, certainly on our council and within this larger room, is that 80% of those 300,000 Philadelphians who reported being food insecure are working Philadelphians. They are working jobs, and they don't feel like they can make enough to put food on their table. And that is a serious lesson for all of us, that we can't traditionally use just macro measures of economic growth and expect that it will end poverty. And I think your editorial in the Inquirer recently that talked about the important things that businesses can do, which is not only, and cities can do, not only just in raising wages, but providing stable schedules, to be smart about how we take care of working parents and families and Philadelphians, is an essential component towards the city's overall health, not just measured in, purely by, massive, corporate growth, but in the city's economic health, felt like by individual residents and members. So I'm looking forward to continuing to push for all of these things with you, and I really just want to thank you for your work in this area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so very much for your testimony. Will the clerk please call the next panel to testify?
Michelle Newman from Brugger's Bagels, and Daisy Cruz from the Mid-Atlantic Director for SEIU 32BJ.
Thank you both. Just please state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Yes, hello, my name is Michelle Newman. I work at the Philadelphia International Airport, and I'm a leader in Unite Here.
Good afternoon. My name is Daisy Cruz. I'm with 32BJ.
So Michelle, if you can, just for the record, turn that microphone right towards you. Yeah, and listen, straighten it out to get it as close as possible, because we want the stenographer.
Oh, I hear you.
Right, every word you say. Thank you.
All right, I got you. All right, my name is Michelle Newman. I'm a leader in Unite Here, and I work at the Philadelphia International Airport. My story starts about roughly 5 years ago when I lost my mother to opioid addiction. A few months after that, I found out the house I was renting was being sold. At the same time, I found out I was expecting another child. I had nowhere to go, and I ended up in an emergency shelter. I went to OSHA every day just to be turned away, to be told that the city was full, there was no space for us. Eventually, I got a spot in transitional housing just in time to give birth to my daughter. I started taking classes to get my GED. I also took serve-save classes for food service work. I got a job at the airport, and I now have been working there for the past 2 years. I have 2 children living with me and 1 adult son who is trying to make it on his own. I'm proud to say that I'm standing on my own 2 feet, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a struggle. Each week I struggle to pay bills between rent, childcare, SEPTA, gas, electric, putting food on the table. It's simply not enough to get by. It doesn't add up. So I do get food stamps, and I cut back where I can. Working at the airport has been a really positive thing for me, but it's not enough to support myself and my 2 children. I make $13 an hour. Because my coworkers and I formed a union, we have full-time work, but the 2 ends still don't meet. The airport is a great resource for our city. It brings billions of dollars into our economy. But when it comes to ending poverty in Philadelphia, there is no shortcuts. We have to raise wages. I applaud City Council for the actions you are taking. It will make a huge difference for me and my children and my coworkers. One day I hope to be able to take my family on a trip or just simply take them somewhere fun and get a car. I want to provide more than just a roof over their heads. That's a dream that we are fighting for at the airport. And with your help, we are taking one step closer to making it a reality. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of City Council. My name is Daisy Cruz. I'm the Director of the Mid-Atlantic District for SEIU 32BJ. 32BJ represents over 10,000 members working in the Philadelphia area and the Collier counties, including the subcontracted workers at the Philadelphia airport. Thanks to the hard work of the mayor and City Council, standing with airport workers after 6 years of fighting for better wages and a union, they just ratified their first contract this past summer. Philadelphia has the largest number of people living in poverty than any other large city in the United States, and does not need more low-wage jobs that leave workers in poverty needing public assistance to get by. Instead, we need family-sustaining jobs that lift workers out of poverty. That is why 32BJ SEIU is supporting increasing the 21st century living wage to $15 per hour. We think that this is an important step towards alleviating poverty in our neighborhoods. The city should not be in the business of subsidizing poverty wage jobs or employers who do business with the city of Philadelphia. I want council to understand that even though the airport receives significant taxpayer support, the nearly 2,000 workers at the airport would not benefit from the increase would not benefit from this increase due to the language in the lease. Next year's lease negotiations will determine if they will be covered. But I still want to thank council once again for your hard work in supporting workers and the right to form a union and be paid a living wage. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Just no questions, but thank you both for testifying. And Michelle, I would like to say that you're a role model for a lot of people here in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you what you're doing and continuing to do. And hopefully we can continue to help you to make that a reality. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Down.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question is for you, Michelle. How old are your children?
My children are 23, 15, and 3. 23, 15, and 3.
Are you familiar with the Earned Income Tax Credit?
Yes.
Because you can get checks, real money, and we'll help you get the checks. And I'm saying this because if anyone else has children under the age of 17, you can get real money from the federal government and file back 3 additional years. So we're happy to, if you want to see me afterwards or whatever, we're happy to help you. Or if you know of people who have kids, if you don't have kids under 17, you can get a check of $508. And if you're making, it's from $7.25 to $22 an hour. If you have children and you're making $44,000 as a single parent, you have 2 kids under 17, or $51,000 as a couple, you can get checks, I'm going to repeat this, of up to $6,000 a year. And you can file back 3 additional years. Someone could get $24,000.
Okay.
So whatever we can do to get you the money, we want to do that. So, I mean, any one of us can help you. The Department of Revenue can help you, but we want to see you get the money. So if you know of other people, I'd love for you to be a champion
Definitely
for that.
do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Thank you very much, and I just wanted to also say to Michelle, thank you for your stories. Your stories change the way we look at issues and how we think about things. It is not enough to do and solve charity through, or solve poverty through charity or small programmatic efforts. It matters to transform the way we think about things. And you've been a stalwart supporter through a whole host of different things. It's been great to be in partnership with you, and I'm grateful to you. I know that your children are grateful for you, fighting for them, but for other moms all across the city who can't be here today to testify in the way that you do. So I just want to honor you. Thank you so much for changing the way we look at things with this. And you know, this bill is the least that we can do, and there's a lot more that we can do together too.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. let me just, before you go, Michelle and Daisy, let me just state this for the record. Michelle, while you're giving your testimony, I'm reminded, and sometimes I think we forget, and if you saw Councilwoman Gibb and I sort of doing this whispering back and forth, people forget sometimes that not everyone starts the race of life at the starting line. Some people start at the 200-yard line, the 300-yard line, and I'm really telling you, some people start a mile, ahead of the rest of us. But what you just described is your willingness to not give up in this race of life. And so no one should ever be able to tell you that your desire to take your kids on a trip, your desire to have a car, your desire to give them access to an opportunity that they may not see presently in front of them, that's what we need you to do. But we don't need government to give it to you. We need you to have access to the opportunity to do it so you can do it for yourself with dignity. Yes. So remember that. Daisy, I just want to say it's nice to see you all. It's nice to see you all here. It's nice to see the entire team. But I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this be developed into a regional campaign that is bipartisan, that is not just in urban municipalities, but our older suburban regions that are also areas where people could also benefit from a wage increase, and that this fight is taken on the big stage, about 2 hours away from here, that place called Harrisburg, because that's where we really need to see some action.
Yes.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call on the next panel?
Darrell Lewis, Sky Chef at the Philadelphia International Airport. And Reverend Gregory Holston, Executive Director of Power.
Can both of you please state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony?
Hi, my name is Darrell Lewis, and I work at Sky Chef at the Philadelphia Airport. I'm 24 years old, and I've been there for 2.5 years. I'm a warehouse worker, which means I pack and transport packaged goods. My duties is to build racks of food and beverages for the airlines, everything from meals to chips to sodas to forks and napkins. I make about $28,000 a year. It's a very physical job. I've seen a lot of people come and go. It's back-breaking work, and some people find that it's not worth it. My goal is just to be comfortable. I want to pay my bills and have money left over. I'm trying to get a better house. I live with my mother right now. I'm trying to save money for my own place. Pretty much every week, I have to dip into my savings to pay bills, so it's hard to save anything. I feel lucky that I don't have any kids. I don't know how I could even support a family on this job. I can barely get by as it is. This bill to increase the city minimum wage is going to help a lot of people in our city. We need it. And I'm also fighting for safety. We have busted equipment. It seems like the company doesn't want to pay for it. One time, a wheel was broken. I told my supervisor about it, but the company didn't do anything about it. A few days later, that same wheel broke off and it crushed my foot. The company treats us like we're less than human beings. Some people are immigrants from other countries. If you come to this country for a better life, it shouldn't matter where you come from or how well you speak English. Everyone deserves respect, everyone deserves safety, and everyone deserves to make a better living. I want to thank the City Council for looking out to Sky Chef workers. We just went through a fight to get included in the minimum wage for the airport. Sky Chef wanted it to be carved out so they could pay less than $8 an hour, but City Council stepped up, and now we're treated like any other airport workers. It made a huge difference for us. I'm happy to stand here today and say we're moving in the right direction Thank you for all y'all support.
My name is Reverend Gregory Holston. I'm the Executive Director of Power. Power is 65 plus, now moving about 100 congregations across the city of Philadelphia, the surrounding counties, now moving out to Lancaster, York, Lebanon, and Dauphin counties, and the Lehigh Valley area. And we're building communities of opportunity that work for all across the state. Faith is the foundation of everything we do, and race is the lens in which we look at every issue. We are thankful for this bill, and we want to thank those who are part of our economic dignity team, our leaders on the team, Kate Esposito, our leaders on the team, Terry Burgeon, our leaders on the team, Carol Duncan, our leaders on the team, Paul DePaul, who have been fighting this fight for about 4 years. About 4 years. We're so glad the administration is with us now, but this is one of the first things we told the administration when they came in, that they had to do this, and we wanted it done in the first 100 days of this administration, but we're thankful that they're standing with us today. Race, again, is the lens in which we look at every issue, and we recognize that 50% of all African Americans make less than $15 an hour, and 60% of all Latinos. So the issue is a racial justice issue. It's not just simply an economic justice issue. It's not simply just a fairness issue. It's an issue that affects and creates racial discrimination. You can look at our workers who are here with us from Unite Here, and you can look at the workers that are here at SEIU, and you see that they're black and brown people. That shows how deeply that this is a racial justice issue. And so when we talk about leading by example in a city that is 45 or 42% African American, majority people of color, it means when you lead by example that you're standing up for racial justice, that you're standing up for racial equality, that you're standing up for racial equity across the board in every area of life. And we're so thankful for today and plead today for those who are co-sponsoring this bill, are taking that step forward to stand up for workers, black and brown workers all across this city. I would also just say to you as a pastor, there's many a times that I've had congregants come and I hadn't seen them for a month or 2 months. And I would ask them, how you doing? What's going on? I haven't seen you. And the response has always been, almost all the time, this: Pastor, I work 2 or 3 jobs. I can't get here on Sunday. I love to be here with my kids and I enjoy the service. But this is the only day off I've had in 2 months, and I decided to come to church. That so many are working extra jobs and are getting paid $7.25 on those extra jobs, and still not making ends meet. Franklin Delano Roosevelt probably said it best, that as he talked about the same issue some 70 years ago, when he recognized that and said that no company, no business that depends on workers who are living in poverty to succeed, if they're depending on those workers to make their business successful, they're businesses that don't deserve to exist. We're glad the city of Philadelphia is stepping up to say that we deserve to exist, because we're going to make sure that all of our workers are making at least $15 an hour and are not living in poverty. We thank you today as we go forward on this issue, but you know as well as I do, with a town that has 26% poverty rate and 14% of the people living in deep poverty, we have so much more to do. We have so much work that has to happen. And we're ready to stand with you and partner with you to put the next pieces of legislation forward as well, because we are in a state of emergency. Children are hurting, families are hurting, and when you're in a state of emergency, you do whatever is necessary to move us out of that emergency. Thank you so much.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Darrell, I just wanted to say thank you again for being here and all the spaces in which you and your brothers and sisters at Unite, and especially at Sky Chef, have raised attention. Again, it's about telling your stories, reminding us that some of the biggest corporations in the world can afford to give their folks a living wage, can afford to give them a stable schedule. You've been able to stand with us, not because the campaign is winnable and easy, but because, most importantly, it's the right thing to do, especially when it's hard, especially when people are struggling. And if we're not there for each other in the times and places in which we have to build out, the tough work ahead, not just because it's in it for each one of us, but because we're committed to that broader anti-poverty agenda, we're not going to win. So I really want to thank all of you and your brothers and sisters at Unite for being just stalwart on this issue, stalwart on that Fair Work Week, and telling your story and having us be heard. And the city should not be subsidizing poverty wages. We shouldn't be doing it in our city, at the airport, or at the school district either. So we're looking forward to winning that with you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all of the witnesses here to testify. In particular, Mr. Lewis, I want to commend you for your testimony and actually being a member of Unite Here. Too often when we look at television on a daily basis and look at the evening news, we see negative views of young men, especially young men of color. And in fact, when you talk about you're trying to save for a home, living with your mother and trying to save the dollars you need to buy your own home, and being a leader in Unite Here and also being a leader in your own right, I think it's very important that you continue to walk in that space. And I think you are being observed by people that you don't even realize, people in your neighborhood, people in your community that see you go to work every day, dealing with the struggles you're dealing with, and still get up every day to go to work and set that message and example. So I just want you to realize the shoes you walk in. When I think about people like Echo Cole or Robert Walker who lost their lives because of the Memphis sanitation strike. So the stuff that you're doing every day is something that's very important. So your testimony really touched me, based on the fact that you're doing what you need to do to show your leadership for young men in your community. So thank you.
No problem.
Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Chairman. And Darrell, I would like to second what Councilman Green said, because it is important to hear that, and from the people who are in there, not just complaining about something, but doing something. And that's the key that we have here. And also, Reverend Holston, thank you for your leadership and Power's leadership on this. They wouldn't take no for an answer. Continue to go out and work on things to make sure this came to be. And we really appreciate that effort that your team has put together. So thank Power and all the organizations that have been a part of this, because this is the only reason why it happened. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell, if there's Darrell, if there's anything that I want you to leave here with today, it's the power of authenticity, and that no one else has the ability to speak for you better than you. So it's nice when people impacted get to tell their story, and it's not manufactured through the lens of someone who hasn't walked in your shoes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a nice day.
Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Is there anyone else here in the audience to testify on this bill? Well, this is going to conclude the hearing. We will now go into the public meeting to consider action to be taken on a bill that was heard today. We are now and officially in the public meeting, and motions for bill number 180846. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla for a motion on bill number 180846.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I proudly move the bill number 180846 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of the council.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 180846 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further moved that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next section of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Excuse me.
Yes.
1 second. I know there was a last-minute amendment that was added, that was shared across.
Do you have your... There is. Do all members have a copy of the amendment?
Yes.
It's a proposed amendment. It should be in front of us. Proposed amendment to Bill number 180846. It has been circulated to all members of the committee. So the chair will recognize Councilmember Squilla for an amendment to Bill number 180846.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the amendment to Bill number 846 be supported.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 180846 be reported from this committee as has been amended. Has been amended. As amended.
And now
Right.
And now we'll do it
That's
as
right.
amended.
And so now we're going to do the bill. We will move it as amended. So the chair is going to recognize Councilman Squilla for a motion on Bill number 180846 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the Bill number 180846 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading at the next session of council.
So it has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 180846 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. And Bill number 180846, as amended, will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. This concludes the business of the Committee on Labor and Civil Service. We thank you all and congratulations. Good job, Squilla.